I was raised a Muslim child in Scotland to a fairly traumatic childhood that resulted in me being rejected by my religion and at some stages by my family, having a child out of wedlock to a Christian white girl, and not being supported in that journey, and then losing access, not being allowed to see my own son, sent me into deep depression. And it was plant medicine that really helped me to find the self love, that helped me to find the that helped me to peel back the layers I needed to peel back to see who I truly was, so that I could heal on a deep level, so that I could forgive, love myself, and love others around me.
Psychedelics are said to shift our fixed perspectives, giving us a bird's eye view of our own lives and helping to remove the lenses of cultural, religious, and social conditioning through which we are taught to see the world. They are being used therapeutically and somatically to treat depression, addiction, PTSD, and trauma, and many are using them to explore the ineffable, those unknown realms of consciousness and beyond. Join us in Adventures of the Psyche as we learn how psychedelics have transformed people's lives. Welcome, friends, to Adventures of the Psyche. Today we are joined by Kash Khan, whose experiences with ayahuasca unpacked religious and generational trauma, helping him heal his depression, gambling, and familial relationships. Kash Khan is a conscious-minded entrepreneur, father to 3 amazing sons, motivational speaker, podcast host, and plant medicine advocate who has built a conscious community called Educate Inspired Change.
My parents are Muslims, and they emigrated to the UK, Scotland, during the 60s. And I was born in 1982 and had a fairly strict Muslim upbringing. There would be a lot of conflict around me and religion growing up, being raised in a predominantly Catholic, Protestant, kind of white Christian country, but with Muslim values, created a lot of inner conflict in me. For example, as a teenager, I wouldn't be allowed to have girlfriends. We wouldn't celebrate Christmas. I wouldn't be allowed to have nights out or anything like this, which would often make me feel segregated and lonely. I would often be punished if I ever did try to have a girlfriend or have a relationship or do things that most people, most children in those days did. This obviously caused some kind of physical abuse, mental abuse between me and my father. There's a lot of suffering there. My mother and father also didn't get along very well. There was abuse in their marriage. And me seeing my mother suffer as a Muslim woman caused me a lot of pain. I wasn't able to defend her in any way, and she wasn't also there for me in the way a mother often should be for a son. I think the religion of Islam, in certain communities, it brings a lot of fear to people and to the way they behave and to the way they live. And I would often see a lot of hypocrisy around me as well, because my father would often take me to the local mosques where I would see men, praying to Allah and being very devout and very humble. And then these same men would be out on the same night in town, drinking alcohol, sleeping with women, doing drugs. And I just found this to be deeply hypocritical. And it created a conflict in me where I said to myself, if I'm going to live, I want to live an honest life. If Allah is real, at least I don't want to take the piss out of his religion. At least I want to be an honest human. And so in my own mind, I chose that at that time, I wasn't going to be a devout religious person. And my parents obviously didn't like it very well. In the community, it's very much frowned upon when you basically disown your religion. I suddenly had all this freedom and I didn't know what to do with it, So me being me, I started to find safety in alcohol and drugs and in relationships with women. And they wouldn't be obviously very healthy relationships. And one of these relationships ended up producing a child. And not long after the child was born, he's just a few weeks old, me and the mother were living together. We were working, everything was going fine. But one afternoon, I just come home and I find that his stuff's gone, she's gone, everything's missing. And I'm just feeling super confused in that moment. And I remember rushing to her parents' house where I thought she might be. And the doors were locked, no one was answering the door, but I could hear my son crying, And I was really confused as to why I couldn't see my son. And there was a bit of a conflict at the house, and the police were called. I was taken to jail on the first of many occasions because they wouldn't want me to come and see my son whenever I wanted. And this just sent me into more deeper kind of depression, you know, and my parents weren't very supportive because they didn't want me to have that. They didn't want me to be a father to him either. But I didn't want to accept this, you know. I wanted to be a father for him. I wanted to take responsibility for my life and for him. So I decided to keep fighting in court. And I kept fighting for 3 to 4 years, tirelessly in court with no support, on legal aid. I didn't have any money either. And after 3 to 4 years, after providing all the evidence that we could, the judge decided in my favor that I was fit to be a father, and that, in fact, the mother had been lying just to stop me from seeing my son. And it was at the moment when I saw my son that I had a realization, and I realized that I hadn't done much with my life that had made any great impact on anyone. And I decided I wanted to change that. And I simply opened a Facebook account. I made a page. I called it Educate, Inspire, Change, 3 words that just came to me. I felt the world needed more education, more inspiration, more change. As I started posting content on this page, I realized that I'd found a passion. I'd unlocked something deep within me. And it was also a way for me to communicate with my son. And this page grew thousands and thousands of followers over a matter of months. So even despite a thriving business and a conscious media website that I was focusing all my attention on, I still had some inner demons that I was battling with. And throughout this period, I had met another girl, and we did have 2 beautiful children together that I'm really grateful for. But during this relationship, I was exposing a lot of my own traumas and wounds from the past. You know, I was still dealing with my issues through drugs and gambling and alcohol, and the relationship wasn't the healthiest. And it was really having 2 young children and having one older child that I couldn't see. I had a lot of conflict around this, you know, because I was constantly trapped in this kind of victim mentality where I was constantly angry at the first mother of my children for not letting me see my son. I was constantly bitter at not being able to see my oldest son and be a real big part of his life. And it kind of took away from me being the most present and best father I could be for my 2 youngest children. In the middle of whilst I was dealing with all this kind of stuff, a retreat in Costa Rica reached out to my page, Educate, Inspire, Change, and invited me to come out and drink ayahuasca for the very first time. And after some deep introspection and investigating and studying this medicine, I decided that this was really a good time for me to take this journey. I didn't really know what I was getting into, if I'm being completely honest, because I had no experience with psychedelics in my life. So I went with great intention. I had done the dieta, which means I had ate very healthy. I had restrained from alcohol and drugs for several weeks before doing the medicine. And I was really prepared to go into this with the best possible intention to heal myself. But nothing could have prepared me really for what actually happened. So during my journey, I saw how I was treated as a child and how this impacted my behaviors as an adult growing up, and how I really was distracting myself my entire life, how I would created defense mechanisms. It was like my ego was so strong, so powerful at defending my little child that was so traumatized that the ego had taken over. And what this medicine was doing, it was breaking down my ego layer by layer. And this is a very, very painful process because your ego does not want to be broken down. Your ego wants to protect the inner child that's been so harmed and is so afraid. And I had lots and lots of fear, and still do to an extent, because I'm still dealing with it to this day. So most of my journeys seem to be around releasing fear and deep trauma related to my childhood and how I was raised as a child. And the more I peel back, the more I'm able to feel my feelings, the more a better father I'm able to be, a better brother, a better son, a better friend, a better business person, overall just a more conscious person, because I take the time to think before I act, to think before I speak. I really check in with my feelings. And I feel that now I'm a much, much better father to my 2 youngest children. It was the hardest decision I have made in my life to come here. Sorry. Saying like this decision to come to Costa Rica was the hardest decision of my life, you know, because I'm basically almost admitting defeat or accepting that I don't want to be a part of my oldest son's life because I can't be. And it was almost like giving up on him. But on one hand, it's the opposite, you know. On the other hand, it's the opposite. I'm actually being strong as I can be for him long term, because the more work I do now, the more work I do with plant medicine or breath work or just being conscious, sets me up to be a better father and a better person long term. So when he does become of age, whether it's 16, 18 or 21, and he decides he wants to seek out his father, he'll find a stronger man. He'll find a man that sets strong roots, and that is a good father to his two younger brothers, you know. One of the most beautiful parts of my life that has healed through medicine has been my relationship with my mother. And my mother is obviously a very strict Muslim. She prays 5 times a day. And she's been watching my own transformation, and she feels that she has her son back. And she feels this so strongly that she's even accepted an invitation to come here to embark on her own ayahuasca journey, which for me is a huge, huge thing for a 60-year-old Muslim woman who's never done a drug or a drink in her entire life to agree to do ayahuasca. For me is very, very brave, because in the eyes of Islam, psychedelics are widely regarded as drugs. And this just shows how powerful this plant medicine is, because it's created such a transformation in me that my son saw how much it changed in me that she's willing to do it as well. These are actually her own words that she said to me when I asked her. She said, "I want to say thank you to this plant for bringing my son back." And that created just so much emotion and gratitude in me. And yeah, and I hope that by me doing plant medicine, my mum doing plant medicine, that we can start to change the perception of plant medicine, show people how these are natural substances born of the planet that are here to heal us, that these are not hallucinogenic drugs that are designed to make us trip out. This is not what they are. These are deep, profound, healing, spiritual plants. They are a huge part in the evolution of mankind, and that they will play a huge part in the future evolution of mankind.
Thank you, Kash. Thank you so much for sharing. Can you share a little bit about what you've learned in your ayahuasca journeys that's helped you to heal your familial relationships?
As a child, I was abused in many ways, and this resulted in my behavior patterns. I then also realized that my father, the same happened to him. So instead of looking at my father as someone that hurt me, I saw my father as someone that was deeply hurt, and that the only way he could share his pain was by inflicting it on me. So how can I possibly resent or hurt or be scared of someone who himself is just a hurt child, you know? So this helped me to really look at my father in a different light, look at my mother in a different light, look at everyone in a different light, because I started to see everyone as children. And then when you see people as children who have just been hurt in different ways, and then their adult self becomes this hurt version of their child, then it's just very easy to love people, you know? It becomes very hard to hate anyone. And it really helps to heal on many different levels, you know, because not only do you look at yourself as a child and start to love yourself and treat yourself like you would a little boy, you start to treat your friends and family in the same way as well.
This reminds me of a study that's in the journal Nature Neuroscience about rats that were blasted with cherry blossom fragrance and then given a shock. And then they did this enough times, and every time after the shock, the rats would have signs of PTSD. And then to the point where they no longer blasted them, or they no longer shocked the rats, they would just blast them with the cherry blossom fragrance. And that was enough of a trigger by association to create the symptoms of PTSD. And then those rats had babies, those babies had babies. The grandbabies of the initial rats in the experiment were blasted with the cherry blossom fragrance and also exhibited the signs of PTSD, never having been shocked in their lives. So, you know, epigenetic studies are now showing we are storing this in our cellular DNA. So it creates the science to back the whole thing up, which is really exciting for me. Last thing I want to ask about is how have all these psychedelic experiences changed your relationship to religion or God or spirit?
Yeah, it's funny you ask this at this time, because I recently had a couple of the most powerful, profound journeys of my life that really reconnected me to God. And following these journeys, the shift was so big in me. I felt, how do I maintain this connection? This is the question I've been asking myself, is how do I maintain this? And the answer I keep getting back is through being conscious, through conscious spiritual practices. I used to give my power away very easily. For example, my partner, or would have she could make me sad or happy in an instant, you know? Or money could make me sad or happy in an instant. The lack of would make me sad, and the abundance of it would make me happy. Whereas now, through having a connection to yourself, to God, the power lies within me and only within me. I don't need a girl to complete me. I don't need money in my bank to complete me. I don't need material things to complete me. I am complete as I am because I have this deep relationship to myself. I can be alone on a beach for 4 hours meditating and I'm completely happy. I don't need anything else. And in those moments of connection, in those moments of divine connection, I find that I'm truly at my best and at myself. And then if I can just maintain those practices, then my life flows more smoothly. I'm much more present. And presence is the key to everything for me now.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kash.
Thank you so much for having me.